Yo guys, swim baits can work year round. But the reality is when a lot of people hear the word swim bait, they think those giant big old baits that a lot of guys are using out west, posting those big old pictures with those 8 to 12 inch swim baits. But the reality is that the majority of guys, when they're mentioning swim baits, when they're talking about it year round as a tool that works consistently for them, they're talking these smaller swim baits, like the V&M Baits 4.5 inch brand new swim bait. And this is gonna be a bait that you can rig a couple different ways and be successful at catching fish year round. So let's break down this technique, starting with rigging. All right guys, first thing we see when we look at this bait is the tail is upside down. They accidentally put this wrong, so they screwed up the whole lure. I'm just kidding with you. This is actually an inverted tail. I'm really glad they did this. It makes a lot of sense once you hear the reasoning behind it. Traditional swim baits are like this, right? That tail hangs down. Well, when that tail is kicking side to side, it's actually pushing that bait upwards. You know, it's pushing water down, which is pushing that bait up. So you've got to use a heavier weight to keep it at the desired depth. But when they did this inverted tail, what this is doing is actually pushing water upwards, which is keeping that bait down and makes it easier to stay at the depth you want this bait to run at. Now, some other features, this bait, it really, the plastic and everything is fantastic for it to be able to swim. You get great kicking action at multiple different speeds. You can really slow this thing down. You're getting that nice little tail action. Also, you want that bait to rock. This is a good characteristic of baits that are really gonna work for you is these smaller swim baits, if they have that little rocking motion or that little side to side motion when they're running through the water, and bass really like that little motion. If that head of that bait's swinging side to side, that tail's kicking, that's gonna be lethal for those bass. You're gonna be maximizing your success, and this bait does that well. Now you can rig this a number of ways. I either like to do it weedless with a weighted little belly hook, or like I've got right now is on a traditional little swim bait head, and I'm using about a 3/0 to 4/0 hook, and then I'll go anywhere from a 1/4 ounce to 3/4 ounce if it's really windy or I'm fishing deep, whatever gets that bait to where I want it to be fished in the conditions I want to fish it. And then lastly, you can rig this up with an umbrella rig. That's also fun. If you're an umbrella guy, you like to throw those A-rigs around, try to catch those multiple fish, this works really good on that as well. Okay guys, when using this bait, there's two things I want to dial in before I start throwing it. First is the sink rate. How fast does this bait sink on slack line? Now this is important because I want to be able to count it down to the water depth that I want to fish it at. So right now I'm in 10 feet of water. What I do is I give it now a bunch of slack, okay? So I'm letting that bait sink all the way down until it hits the bottom. Now I want to count as it sinks. So here we go. 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004, 1005, 1006. Okay, 6 seconds, we're in 10 feet of water. So that means it's going a little bit over 2 feet per second. So that way, now when I'm out fishing it, I now know if I'm fishing 20 feet of water and I want it to be just halfway down to 10 feet, I'm gonna count to about 5 or 6 seconds, and that's gonna put it in that 10-foot water column. Now, next, the second thing is I want to know how fast I need to retrieve this to keep it at a consistent water depth, and that it's still also getting the action I need. So I'm making little casts, and I'm gonna keep this rod tip up, and I'm gonna see how fast I need to reel this thing to keep it right at the same water level. So I want to keep it just about 1.5 feet underneath the surface, and that tail still wiggling. So I got about that speed right there. I can see that bait is still moving, it's still kicking, and it's staying at the exact same spot underneath that water that I want it running at. So now that I have those two things figured out, anywhere that I go fish now, I can count that bait down, and then I can retrieve at the right speed that I can keep that bait in the right water column. So now when I'm actually fishing this thing, I want to make long casts, okay? Past my target here. I'm gonna count this bait down. Actually, where I'm fishing right now, I need to count it down a few seconds. Then with my rod tip down, I'm gonna make that slow retrieve at that cadence that I figured out. So that's about I know that's running about even in the water column. And then every once in a while, I'll give it that rod tip, just a little tap, just a little twitch. And what that's doing is that's giving that bait just a little erratic motion. And bass are notorious for just following swim baits. A lot of times they'll just see it and they'll just start tracking it. And if you throw that little If you throw that little twitch in there, what that does is that makes that little bait do something different real quick, and that can be the difference between triggering a strike out of some fish that's just curious or wanting to investigate it. Now you can use anywhere from about a 10-pound to a 15-pound mono or fluorocarbon. Today I'm using a 12-pound Tatsu fluorocarbon. This gives me a little bit better sensitivity so I can feel if it bangs off any cover down there, rocks, or those subtle little bites that can happen a lot of times, like in this winter time when these fish are a little bit more sluggish. And then lastly, I really like the low visibility that fluorocarbon has. A lot of times in these clear California lakes that I fish out here, you know, I want to use any advantage I can, and having that lower vis fluorocarbon just usually works out. I have a little bit more confidence with. All right, guys, the popularity of these little swim baits is obviously because of that great swimming action it has, the tail and the rocker. It really gives it a lifelike look. But the other reason is because of the versatility. How many different locations you can fish this bait. You can move up shallow and really look for these shallow fish, and you know, along structure or any kind of things like that. But then you can count this bait out. You can cast it out into deeper water, count it down, and fish, you know, over points, island tops, along little steep bluffs and everything for fish on the bottom, suspended fish, and even fish that are, you know, hitting, you know, up near the surface and everything. So this bait really can work in so many different locations as long as you know what you're trying to do with that bait. Now, when I'm trying to fish for fish in a certain depth, I like to keep this bait slightly above that. So for example, if the fish are in about 10 feet of water, and I can see on my graphs those fish are in 10 feet of water, I want to keep my bait in about 8 feet of water. So I'm going to count it down right now about 4 seconds, because I've got about a 1/4 ounce weight that sinks it about 2 feet every second. Now, the reason being is bass really like to feed up, especially on these bait fish and stuff like that. So you want to keep that over them, so they'll see that coming over their head. They'll see that vulnerable time, because if they can come from above, that's their way to sneak up and ambush prey. So if I can keep that right above them, you have a better chance of getting bit than coming below where the fish are positioned. Swim baiting is such a broad term, which can really deter a lot of starting off anglers. And the reality is, the majority of the time, when people are talking about swim baits, they're talking about these smaller little swim baits and how versatile they are, like V&M's brand new little 4.5-inch swim bait. So whether you're fishing giant reservoirs or just your local little farm pond, this bait can really put fish in the boat. It doesn't matter of all sizes. So it's got to be something you put in your arsenal because of the success, because of how well this thing can actually work out for you. Anyway, guys, I'm Travis with Lucky Tackle Box. If you liked the video, throw us the thumbs up like always. Hit the subscribe button. We've got a lot of cool stuff going on our channel. You want to make sure that you're always in tune to that. And leave a comment below. I always make sure I respond to those. If you got any questions or comments, I'll try my best to answer. Also, for any details on the gear or the tackle we're using in this video, check the description box below for some links. I want to catch a fish on this cast, dude. You guys owe me. Come on, fishies. You owe me. You owe me, you owe me. You owe me, homie.